All right, I'll call the roll. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Q. Councilmember Kerr.
Present.
Councilmember Parmet. Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Thisted.
Present.
Mayor Riley.
Present.
There are 4 members present.
Okay, thank you. For the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And I would like to, from the chair, make a motion to add an additional item to the agenda at the end of this meeting. And I'll call it other issues for the council to discuss recent issues associated with the Summit County Housing Authority and any other issues that may come up. Can I have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? The motion is passed by a 4-0 vote. And with that, can I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion is approved. The agenda has been amended. We're now entering into the interview process. I just want to remind the council that it's going to be a potentially a long evening. I believe our schedule is going to be very, very tight to get through the interviews in 20 minutes. And so
that means you've got to talk fast. I'll speak really quickly. I actually don't do that.
not just you, Kathy, but I did want to point out, since you were the only one here to begin with, the reason that we only have 4 members of the council here tonight. We're supposed to have a 5th. I'm sure he's on his way shortly, but 2 council members had pre-scheduled vacations planned. One of them was in Asia, and the other was down in Louisiana, I believe. Welcome you, Kathy. And you get to be the guinea pig as our first interviewee. And can you give us just a short biography of yourself and tell us why you're interested in serving on the Planning Commission?
Okay,
Well, just a second, if I could hold off. Councilmember Parmet just arrived.
Sorry, it's delayed at work.
Carol, fill him in on the question he has.
Number 4.
The one before you.
Number 4 then.
All right. So with that, Kathy, could you go ahead?
okay, before I came to Summit County, I grew up in Washington, D.C. I was a partner in a law firm that was pretty much exclusively real estate and low-income and multifamily housing practice. But when I came out here, I basically ditched. I was practicing it for about almost 20 years in DC, which, by the way, we still couldn't vote for a mayor in the mid-70s. And we didn't have a county commissioner telling us what to do. We had a federal legislative body. But anyway, I came out to Summit County in the end of, I guess it was 89. And I was trying to change focus. My first job actually was in Moab, and I became a rap guide, and then I became a snowmaker at Breckenridge, and but I still kind of had my feeling that I have to be engaged in what's going on, And after a couple of years, I joined the Summit County Housing Authority, which, because I had a lot of experience in that kind of field, but that turned out not to be a really great experience. We spent most of our time going around to town councils and asking for money to pay and to buy a little bit of, some paper clips and folders and things. So then, anyway, I kept my bar membership up in Colorado until the early 2000s, and then I went in and got active because it was just too much onerous to want to do continuing legal education classes. So, but I've always, since I came out, I've been engaged in what's been going on in my little domain. And I've been at a lot of PUD meetings, probably almost everyone in Loveland Pass Village, but also things like the first PUD, Keystone PUD announcement when they gave how it was going to deal with the neighborhoods and all of those things, and so I always try and be really well informed as to what's going on, and locally and also, in kind of the world, but the reason that I want to be on the planning commission is I think I have really good experience. And even though I can tell you that the federal programs that I worked with don't exist anymore, pretty much. The whole emphasis was on building subsidized units around the country, and that is from Section 8 and public housing and farmers' home and all of those things. And those kind of started going away in the end of the 1980s. So I don't hold myself out at all as an authority as to what's going on today, but I know I kind of know what's going on, and I know that I can learn what's going on with affordable housing. We didn't even use that word really much back in those days. It was low income and lower income. I really want to be a voice that can be heard in our new community. And because I want to be part of the discussion that goes forth, from our town council. So I guess that's a pretty lengthy answer here to your question.
Well, thank you. Gretchen?
So please describe what you think the role of the planning commissioner is and who the planning commission represents.
I think it's a role as an advisor, basically to the town council, and I think its advisory part is to let the community know what is going on out there. And I think I guess it works with the planning department that makes the kind of the, more, administrative, issues and, but I think that we would be an advisor to help, town council and land use issues that are going to be coming up.
All right.
You already alluded to it a little bit, but who do you think a planning commission is primarily responsible to? What the hierarchy of a planning commission?
Well, the town, the people, I don't know if you guys saw the Silverthorne, the article in Summit Daily this week, and how the planning commission was kind of like ruining the day that they voted for a project. And it's like, well, you shouldn't be at a position where you have to vote for a project that is really contrary to the community. But I know that's the perfect world. But I'm hoping that our more relevant, that our planning commission won't have referendums against our recommendations and all of those that we know our other neighbors to the west. But anyway,
Thank you. Aaron?
Why is the land use and development code important, and how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
I didn't hear the last word.
Why is the land use and development code important, and how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
I think as circumstances change, is how often you should do it. And I think since the Keystone PUD went into force, and I think in '95 or something, I think that there are a lot of changes that maybe, I know that you guys just adopted a lot of the county code, but there maybe should be looked at again, because everything like traffic and Highway 6 and parking and even wildlife in our area and stuff. I mean, I think it's probably ready to kind of, I don't mean just for the PUD, we don't know what's happening with that, but in our town, we maybe want to look at kind of a new Keystone version of what we want to happen.
Carol?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for your interest. One of the responsibilities of the Planning and Zoning Commission will be to work on the master plan. Can you describe to us what you think is the role of the master plan for the town of Keystone?
Well, it's partly for the Planning Commission. I think that probably, I don't know quite what's going to happen to our planning department, except for Lindsay. I think there's going to be one more person, and the rest of it's going to go out to the county. Is that?
The master plan will be likely contracted out.
But regardless of who does those actions,
Pardon me?
well, regardless of who does what is the master plan for? What can it do for the town of
It's
Keystone?
to be a kind of a comprehensive, idea of how we want our future, to be successfully, done. And I think that that's why it really probably should be, reworked every, I don't know how many, years, but that the circumstances change, and we need to be able to change with them and with our vision of the future of Keystone.
And last question, in your opinion, what are the two most important issues facing the community? And what should the town do about
And what?
it? And what should the town do about it?
Okay, traffic in Highway 6, actually. And I think that before that we start doing more development and things, we need to get a hold of the Highway 6 corridor, you know. I know that housing would be a good answer, but I think before we get more people and more building, we need more of an idea of how to get control of our highway. We just have this one little highway for everyone, and we share it with Loveland and the Basin. Anyway, I kind of feel pretty strongly about that.
All right, well, thank you. Does anyone else have any follow-up with anything?
So if we accept your premise that US 6 is the priority, needs to be over everything else, would there be a second or and third priority that you would add once you saw things moving forward there at 6?
Well, I would like Keystone to stay, not as it is, but I want it to still have a feeling of a kind of rural town in the mountains of Colorado. I don't want to be I don't feel like I want a kindred at every spot around on the snake or something that 58-story buildings, and that's part of that. Feet is kind of is not compatible with having a nice rural town that we want to live and play in. So.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And the council, you surprised me. That was exactly 20 minutes.
I told you, great job.
Look at Lindsay, he's smiling.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Yeah, thank you
you.
very much.
Have fun for the rest of the night.
Lindsay? Tim is on the hallway? Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, thank you, Kathy.
Who brought these? That's whoever you are.
Feel free to bring one for your partner here, that would be great.
Yes, your partners.
How do I just carry this around?
Do that.
See, I might have to have one then.
Have a seat, Tim.
Because see, when you're going from work to work, getting dinner in between ain't a thing.
Thank you, Erin.
Yes, thank you.
So wait, who brought these? Who am I thinking?
Gretchen Crawford.
Ah, all right. Thank you, Gretchen.
Oh, Tim,
Ma'am?
going to be too hard on me.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. I think we all know you somewhat, but could you give us a short biography of yourself? Tell you why you're interested in serving on the Planning Commission, and let us know where you live in Keystone.
Short bio of myself. So from Wisconsin originally, started my career in university administration, working at the University of Wisconsin for 7 years, and then University of Cincinnati for 2 years. I was in student affairs. Decided to change careers, so got another degree in computer science, and went to work once I moved to Cincinnati, and then took a job as an entry-level programmer, working for a company that at the time I was employee number 500. When I left, they were a global company with over 50,000 employees, so that was through that company, I started as entry-level programmer, but then worked up through the software ranks, and then I was in sales, product management, assistant to the CEO, and then moved into organization development. I was head of organization development, so managed all of the training and succession planning and leadership development across the world. And while I was in India for a 2-week consulting stint, the head of HR quit, and they asked me if I would take over. I said, well, I'm not really an HR person, but okay. And just until they hired somebody, and my 2 weeks turned into 8 years in India. I was going to leave that company after 5 years, but then Microsoft convinced me to stay and head up all of their training development, leadership development in India. So I stayed another 3 years, but then moved back here in 2015. And then when I lived in the Philippines for 1 year, India for 8 years. And then when I moved back here in 2015, I moved here full time. Bought my first condo in 2000 in Montezuma condominiums. So when I moved back here, I lived there, and once I was here, then I took over as president of the Montezuma HOA. And then 4.5 years ago, I moved to the sanctuary. Swore I would, as Gretchen can remember, swore I would never be on the board of the sanctuary, much less be the president. But that lasted about a year. So now I'm the president of the sanctuary HOA. Board, I guess, almost 6 years ago now, and took over as president 4 years ago. So I finished that stint as KOA president this July 1st. I'm turning into 2-3 terms. So that will be coming to an end. And on the KNC board, and I think you all know my involvement in the incorporation effort. So why I'm interested in doing this? I always said when I decided not to run for town council that I plan to still be actively involved in the town, but just in a different way. And was looking for a way that, and Ken and I talked about this, where could I contribute the most? This interests me because I really haven't had a lot of experience working in planning and zoning. So I think it's a combination of it'd be a new experience for me, so it'd be something new for me to learn and to get excited about, but also that I can contribute, because through all of my years of living here, working with KOA in KCL, lots of contacts both in the county and in the resort, lots of historical perspectives and things that have happened, lots of dealing with some planning issues in the past. And so I think it's a good combination of me being able to contribute with the experiences that I've had over the last 8 years, almost 9 years now living here full time, and the contacts that I have both in the community and in the county. So that's kind of what prompted my interest. I thought this would be a good way for me to contribute and a good way for me to do something different that would keep me motivated.
So
how do you see the role of the planning commissioner? Describe what you think of the role and who they represent.
And what was the last time?
And who does the planning commission represent?
Well, I think they represent the citizens of all of the constituents of this community, not just the citizens, but, and I think one of the issues, in the past, it seems like when the new development came in, because I'm pro-development, the problem is that you have to make sure that when you're expanding and developing, that you're doing that in such a way that doesn't have a negative impact on the community and on the second homeowners, the people who live here. And I don't know that I would say that it's been rubber stamped before, but it just seems like they didn't go deep enough in terms of understanding the impacts that some of these new developments might have on the community. So I'm supportive of growth, but they want to do that growth in a smart way, that it's a positive addition to the community without negative impacts. And, when I think of some of the things, one of the most egregious ones to me always is the Antlers Gulch Road situation, where Antlers Gulch is the first HOA, and there's this tiny little road that's accessed, and so they agree, yeah, we'll maintain that road. And then the county comes along years later and builds two huge, affordable housing development, West Hills and Wintergreen, both who access on Winters Green Road, and nowhere through that whole process was there any requirement for the developer or for those communities to have to maintain that access road, or for the county to take it over. And I mean, how could somebody not have thought of, if you're going to have this tiny little Antlers Gulch HOA still is the one who's technically responsible for maintaining that road after you approve the plans for two huge housing developments that come off of that road. So I think traffic is a thing that needs to be looked at a great deal. Parking is, an issue, of course, that needs to be looked at in a great deal. So I think the role of the Planning and Zoning Committee is to make sure that the development and the things that are going on don't adversely impact the community, both the people who live here, the second homeowners who are here an awful lot. I used to say when I took over as president of Montezuma, one of the reasons I got involved was because the board there was so, we used to call them, they said no to everything because it was just easier. And there was a lawyer on the board, so that always so risk averse. And so when I took over, I said we were going to become the board of yes. So I want homeowners to be able to improve the value of their property, but they have to do it in such a way that doesn't adversely impact others. So, simplify some of the very bureaucratic processes that people have to go through. So I kind of feel the same way, looking at the Keystone community, that, that the planning and zoning can play an important role to make sure that people are doing, helping people do things the right way and do it in such a way that has a positive impact on the community. And so it's not to say no, but it's to say yes, but to say yes in such a way that kind of helps them do it in the best way that will have the most positive impact.
Councilmember Diston?
Who do you think a planning commission is primarily responsible to?
Responsible to?
Right.
Primarily responsible to the community. I guess technically they're responsible to the council, which is representing the community. But I think that's why it's important to have such broad community involvement and support of the Planning Commission, because I think they're responsible to the community to make sure that the things that they are approving and they're doing, like I said, have a positive impact on the community, not a adverse impact. And that sometimes means you have to dig and ask the right questions, and that's, and I think that's one of the values that I can bring, is that I've been around long enough to know some of the questions to ask and to know where some of the problems have occurred in the past, and to once again, not to say no, but to say, well, let's do this, but let's figure out a way to do it in the right way that will be a positive impact, not a negative impact.
All right. Councilmember Cormet.
Why is the land use and development code important, and how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
Well, I don't think you should amend it any more than you have to. I mean, it's important because you want to have consistent policies and procedures. You want to make sure that you're meeting, all of the safety requirements that are out there. One of the things that you would hope, and this I sometimes relate it to, obviously much smaller scale when you're looking at an HOA, and I'm going through a couple of situations now where one of my owners is arguing, well, why do I have to get a building permit just to build a deck on my house? And it's like, well, because you may be a very good construction person and be able to build that deck, but how do we know that? And when you build that deck and somebody breaks through the railing and breaks a leg or hurts himself, we're the ones that are going to be responsible. So we want to make the code obviously has a lot of safety requirements that are built into it. So you want to make sure that people are doing it. But the trick, I think, is for people to think of the planning commission, just like I sometimes try to, is it's not being a hurdle that you have to get through, but it's somebody that can help you do it the right way. And so I always look at it, and when I tell my homeowners is, I'm not here to prevent you from doing what you want to do. I'm here making sure that you can do it the right way and not have to, the last thing I want you to do is to build something and me have to tell you to tear it down because it's not the code. I mean, that doesn't do you or me any good. So my role is to help you, not to be a hurdle that you have to get through. And I think in terms of how often should it change, I mean, if it's changing constantly, I think that just makes it more difficult for people to, so you need to change it if it's really required. But one of the things that I found is people tend to skirt and not go through the proper processes if it's too bureaucratic to work through. And so, and I found that, once you simplify, you make the process smooth, and you make it easy to understand, people are willing to do it. They think of it as assistance, as opposed to, I don't have time to fill out that 10-page form, and I don't even know how to answer half these questions. So once again, so I like to think of it as the Planning and Zoning Commission is to help you, not here to be a hurdle that you have to jump hoops to get through.
Councilmember Kerr.
So looking past the codes, and by the way, thank you for stepping up and showing your interest in this. But one of the responsibilities of the Planning Commission will be the master plan. Can you explain in your words the role of the master plan for the town of Keystone?
I think that's the biggest thing we need right now. And I'm very, when Ken and I had my initial discussions, I talked about the master plan as something that I'm really interested in. And I think if you have a master plan, that just kind of helps guide the Planning Commission in terms of all the stuff that happens down the road. But the big things are, highway safety, transportation, parking, and they're also interlinked. I mean, you're not going to solve the parking issue until you solve the transportation issue, until you get to a point where, how do people that are staying in the condos find it convenient to shuttle to the resort as opposed to driving 2 minutes down the road and taking up a parking space, and then all of our parking is full every Saturday and Sunday.
I'd like to ask a follow-up.
Pardon?
Let me follow up on that.
Okay.
Looking back at your HOA experience, what are your takeaways about the role of a master plan, based on what you've seen and done?
Well, the role of the master plan is to have a guideline as to how you move forward in terms of some of the components I talked about, so that you can say, well, what's this going to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now? I think sometimes people feel anyway that we just keep adding more development, more condos, more buildings, without any thought as to what's this going to be like in 5 years or 10 years? Is the traffic going to be lined up all the way to Silverthorne? Is the parking lot's going to be full every weekday? So the master plan is to say, well, where do we think we're going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and what do we need to do to make sure that creates a community that can support all the growth that may be coming, and even without growth, to fix some of the problems that we have today. So it's kind of a guide, for.
I guess I was looking to see what you learned from using and living with the county master plan.
Living with the current master plan?
County one.
Oh, I don't know that I've ever seen the county master plan.
Alright.
But it's, I guess the thing with the master plan, just from some of my experiences, kind of related to like a strategic plan at a corporation. I used to run strategic planning meetings for a company all the time. Is, if it can be a piece of paper that sits on the shelf, or it can be a living document that people actually use as a guide. And the problem that I've seen too often is it's an exercise that people go through because they think it's something that we need to do, but then they don't necessarily follow. That sometimes depends upon how good of a job did you do putting in a master plan
I'm feeling self-conscious now, I think.
Okay.
The mayor has one more question.
Yes. Okay. In your opinion, what are the two most important issues facing our community, and what should the town do about them?
Well, I think Highway 6 safety obviously is one of the biggest issues. And I think, everybody talks about the traffic light. I don't know that that's the most important solution to that. I think looking at pedestrian traffic and walkways is probably, I think, a bigger issue in terms of solving, because if you just look as where do people, if they want to walk, which of course we would encourage, what path will they have to use to get there? And there's just, it's almost unavoidable to walk on the highway sometimes. And so I think that is a big issue. And I think, going back to the master plan, I think having a plan for how we deal with parking and traffic going forward. I mean, we have a lot of new development coming in right now. I mean, we have Kindred, we have Brightwood, we have Alcove, we have a bunch of smaller ones, other ones coming up that people don't even know about yet. And, how do we sustain a livable environment with parking and traffic if we don't have a plan as to how we're going to deal with that? So, and that, that contributes negative impacts on the whole community. It's not just a hassle those of us who live here that try to turn left out of my road, or depending upon whether it's morning or afternoon. I mean, it's almost impossible to get in and out sometimes during the rush hours, and then you create a dangerous situation because people are doing something wrong. If I don't go for it, I'll never get out of here. So what the heck? So I think how is it safety, and then the whole parking and transportation problem has to be resolved.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tim. Any last questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Another 20-minute one, Lindsay.
That was 20 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on it.
It went so fast, didn't it?
Hey, Tim, thank you for coming in.
All right.
Nice job.
Super efficient.
I'm shocked.
Fail.
This is wonderful.
This is wonderful.
That one was 19, eh?
Because I was thinking I would be here till midnight.
Yeah, we are.
We're not
To the
done
next
yet.
one.
Well, maybe now it'll only be 10.
Yeah.
It's all, this will happen.
Hi, all.
Hi, John.
Hello, John.
I'm gonna deduce that this is from me, right?
You did.
You can't see the flames coming off the seat, the hot seat.
Carol, isn't that your chair?
But John, thank you for coming in.
Of course.
We appreciate your time today as we go through this tough decision for us of selecting the Planning and Zoning Commission. Probably one of the most important decisions we've made since we've been in council. And first question we have for you is to just give us a short biography of yourself, predominantly related about how it relates to your qualifications on the Planning Commission. And tell us why you're interested in serving on the Planning Commission, and let us know where you live.
Yeah, definitely, thank you. So a lot of folks in the room do already know me, so I'm gonna kind of dig a little deeper into some of the biographical information that you might know about me. First off, I live in Wintergreen still, one of the 3 buildings that are in the town. So as a lot of you know, I do have a history of working with the Boy Scouts, and then also in college, I was really heavily involved with my extracurriculars and those types of extra things from college. What I think these both show, and I can go into the granular details of them if you'd like, but they show a mindset, right? They show the ability to view a problem, view a task, and for us, right, I'd say starting at ground zero, right? We're starting at A, but really we have some plans from the county that we can adopt and can adjust. So it's not completely starting at zero, but we as a new town are starting at zero. So having that mindset, that ability to help form a lot of the suggestions or proposals for those regulations that will really serve as the bedrock for the Planning and Zoning Commission is what I think I can bring to the table, right? So through Scouts, we led an organization of hundreds of thousands across the country and the world. And the team that I led specifically was 700 during the World Scout or the National Scout Jamboree in West Virginia. So I can lead a team and think from the perspective of what needs to get done to ensure that the task at the end is complete. And then one example that I used when I was writing my letter of interest was looking into the future, right? So a lot of what the Planning Commission will do, in my perspective or my understanding, is not very much so like snap your finger and all of a sudden we're going to have sidewalks down the road here. And so being comfortable with that 5, 10, 15-year plan is definitely important. And that's what I have had experience with doing with my Scout camp in particular. Just actually this summer, we're going to be opening, or not we, but they're going to be opening their brand new welcome training medical and store. And that was something we talked about starting in 2016. So 8 years ago, right? And so I'm very comfortable with that, understanding that we won't necessarily get everything done right now, but what this commission hopefully will be focused on is really setting that groundwork for the future for our town. So I think that those 2 examples are kind of additional bibliographic information for y'all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Davis?
So, please describe how you see the role of the planning commissioner and who they represent.
So thank you very much.
If you're selected so what would be your role and who do you consider that you represent?
Definitely, thank you for that question. I think that there's 2 main constituents to be considered of, right? First and foremost, the people that currently live here in town. Those that own a business, those that live here with their family, or own property here. And then really the second group that I think often gets overlooked is those looking to be here, right? We have a ton of workforce housing, not nearly enough in the county for everyone, but there's a lot of people that want to be here and can't. So those decisions that would need to be made are oftentimes, so kind of the second part of your question, those decisions that need to be made in the role of the commissioner. I don't want to say rubber stamp because that comes off negative connotation, but a lot of times looking through the gray area and looking between the lines on what proposals have and if they meet the criteria, I think is the main role of the commission body. And a lot of times it's not 100% black and white. There's definitely areas where proposals might not check every single box, but I think it's the commission's body or role to really see if the proposal meets the laws and what the code says needs to be in those proposals. And I think that that's the main role. Some people might call it rubber stamping, but I don't think it's rubber stamping because there's so much gray area and there's so much reading into the proposals that isn't necessarily crystal clear.
All right. Councilmember Parmet.
Nope.
Oh, Councilmember.
Sorry.
Thurston, thank you.
Who do you think a planning commission is primarily responsible to?
The citizens of the town, with an understanding that the planning commission needs to be in line with the council, right? There's an obvious tie-in between those, but at the end of the day, the reason why everyone's sitting in this room, even the staff is here, is because of the citizens of this town. And that partnership between the planning commission and the town council needs to be crystal clear, but also it shouldn't be an organization that just rubber stamps everything between the two.
Now, Councilmember Parmet.
Why is the land use and development code important? And how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
So I think it's important, as I kind of mentioned earlier, a lot of those decisions, especially if you look at other towns, right? Things that are getting approved or pushed through, like if the code says the building has 4 blocks in it, and if it has 4 blocks and has 4 parking spots, it can be approved, right? This is very simple. But if the code says that's okay, we can't just say, well, I don't like the color of your paint, actually, so we're not going to let that go through. So the gist of it, right, is if the code spells out what is allowed in our town, then there's no potential for wrongdoing. There's no potential for folks thinking that they're being mistreated by the government here. And really making sure that code is crystal clear in what's allowed and what's not allowed, I think is why it's so important. There is certain statutes for the timeline. There is certain statutes for when comp plans need to be updated and when things need to be looked at. And I think that the 15 years is way too much time, to be honest. So it should be, I don't know what the answer is, but it should be some kind of semi-annual review. And again, we don't need to start at ground zero, right? We don't need to start from scratch. But at least reviewing and making sure doing a pulse check on those codes every couple of years, I think is a very appropriate time frame on that.
All right. Councilmember Kerr.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for throwing your hat in the ring. So one of the key roles of the Planning Commission is the master plan. Can you talk to us how you perceive the role of the master plan for the town of Keystone?
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at the comp plans from any of our neighboring communities, 257 pages, I think is sort of one, right? So it's not a document that I throw in the ChatGPT and all of a sudden it's done, right? And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of planning to get that, the master plan, the comp plan for our community. I do think that there is a starting point with the documents that some county has, and we can potentially adapt some of that. But there's a reason why the town formed and the appetite for us to be our own town. And it's, no offense to Summit County, it's not because we loved everything we were doing. And so being able to really adapt that, and the important part of the comp plan is that it really sets the bedrock for where we see our community going in 10, 15, 20 years. And so ensuring that we get the stakeholder engagement from everyone that's in town, both second homeowners and also citizens, in my opinion, would need to be involved in that comp plan process and ensuring that they are really having their voices heard in that, and ensuring that we can really set the town on the right the course.
In what way does it do that? I like the way you say it,
Sure.
but in what way does the master plan set this course? How is it used?
Well, I think it's a blueprint almost, right? And in some ways it actually literally is a blueprint. And it shows where the town is going to go, right? So if the appetite for us right now as a community is to increase public transportation, increase walkability of town, that would likely be captured in the comp plan. And then the actions of our town, right, through either financial spending or through grants that we get from other organizations, would go to supporting those initiatives that are called out by the stakeholders in town. So it's the blueprint for how we hope to see the town grow, especially focused on our public use.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And John, last question. In your opinion, what are the 2 or 3 most important issues facing the community, and what should we do about it?
Related to planning, I presume?
No, anything.
I think that one of the big ones that's often overlooked in some spheres is the cohesiveness of the community. There definitely is at times a sentiment that certain aspects of our community's voices are not being heard. And I think that the council has done a really good job to involve second homeowners in some of these decisions. And so I think that cohesiveness in the community and support for their government is a big one. There are certain organizations in town that are very influential that might view the government as an enemy. And I think that ensuring that relationship is positive and that cohesively as a whole unit, we can grow in the right direction is a potential opportunity. And then the second opportunity I think I would call out is the future growth. So Keystone, 80%-ish developed, right? There is still a lot of opportunity. One of the things that keeps getting called out, Razor Drive, and then also the parking lot at the base of River Run. 2 areas that are continually called out. Obviously, transportation, sidewalks, to be able to get to and from locations in town. They're not that big, so you should be able to walk across town without using a bike path that lines. So development, usability, those, and then also the cohesiveness of the town, I think are the 2 main things.
Well, thank you. Does anyone else in the council have a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood. You may mention same breath, Loveland Pass Village and parking at the base of River Run. What was tying those together? Oh, yeah.
Usability of the town, right? So being able to walk to certain areas, development, so development of the parking lot potentially, development of that intersection working with the state. So development in general, I bucket that in,
Okay.
and then cohesiveness of the community.
Thanks.
I have one.
Go ahead.
You kind of talked related to this, but specifically, how do you balance the development versus conservation or preservation of town character?
Yeah, and that's, I think the answer to that lies in our codes and comp plan. Again, going back to that notion that a lot of the planning commissions need to follow the codes and follow the laws. So if we, as a town, as a council, support certain protections through those codes, then I think we would be able to balance that. And then also realistic evaluations during the process, right? So if we want to look at certain developments and its impact in the environment, we need to be realistic with those evaluations and not kind of rubber stamp and throw that under the rug. It needs to be a real process review.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one. You have a unique situation in that you are employed by Vail Resorts.
Yep.
Could you please address, do you see any potential conflict of interest in that area?
Yes, and I'm very happy that you brought that up because I did want to speak to that, so thank you. I think that anyone who is truly involved in the community will have some conflict of interest in one way, shape, or form, right? You might own a business in town, you might have children that utilize a bus route, you might work for a business that operates in town. And the important aspect of any conflict of interest, conflicts that you all at this table might have that are different than mine, is being able to ensure that your decisions are ethical and that you call out those conflicts. I don't think there's any question, right, that I do have a conflict of interest because Vail Resorts is my employer. And I have moved to a job in Breckenridge that has removed me from the direct line with Keystone employment, but at the end of the day, there is still that conflict. And calling that out, being aware of it, right, and ensuring that I am very upfront about that, I think is the way that I'd address that. And then also just knowing if decisions come to the table that are tied to the resort or are tied to a potential conflict, immediately removing myself and not being involved in that process. That's why there's alternatives. And I think that at the end of the day is kind of the gist of it. And I do have a conflict. Everyone in town has a conflict in one way, shape, or form. But I would be aware that I would call that out, and I would make sure that it does not become an issue.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate your time today, and we'll let you know.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's time around the table, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today.
What is it?
3 minutes or later.
Yes. Everybody gets a criteria now, new criteria. Yeah, we gotta beat it.
No, I predicted that we would be averaging 30 minutes in interview, and I was wrong.
Well, we could.
But that was super good. I feel like we nailed
Yeah.
it. We didn't need any more time.
I think we're covering the right question.
We are still being recorded.
Yes, you are.
Well, we're just patting ourselves on the back for efficiency, people.
Good evening, everybody. All right. How are you? I'm Steve Jacobson.
Hi, nice to meet you, Steve.
Valerie, this is-
Oh, I'm Gretchen Davis, sorry.
Pleasure. All right, Aaron, that's Steve Jacobson.
Good to meet you.
Aaron's right here. Thank you.
You know me.
I'm Steve.
I'm Matt.
And whoever's behind the screen now.
That's Rick. Whoever is behind the curtain.
Come, Lindsay.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, and looking forward to a good exchange of dialogue.
Well, Steve, thank you for very much for coming. You know, this is probably one of the more consequential decisions that we'll be making, or certainly be making, and have made in a short life, almost 90 days life of the town. And we appreciate you volunteering to become a member of this important committee. Could you please give us a short biography of yourself, you know, as it relates to planning, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and why you're interested in serving on the town's planning commission?
Sure. I'll start with why I want to serve on the commission. I think there's two reasons. One's more kind of, as I put on the emotional side, one's more on the kind of the bricks and sticks and the actual experience. One of the best examples I can use to give an example is a project I worked on previously. When the Ricketts bought the Chicago Cubs, I was brought on board to be the lead consultant to lead all the consultants on the renovation of Wrigley Field. And so the family said two things: we're not tearing down the ballpark, and Cubs are going to play during the renovation. So you had that, plus a 22-and-a-half-week schedule during the winter, 100-year-old ballpark, what could go wrong, everything, and then a very charged political environment. So a lot of work, a lot of effort, and you always wonder, doing this a while, you always wonder you're doing the right thing. And really the best litmus test is, how do the people use the facility, how do they react when they go through it? And it was interesting, earlier in the week, I went to the Cubs were playing the Astros, And I was with a bunch of colleagues and friends. Some had been to Wrigley hundreds of times. Actually, there was 3 the first time. And I think the most satisfying thing for me was because of my background being an architect and being interested in historic preservation, is we go into the ballpark, we go through under the marquee, and we get to our seats, and to a person, whether they had been there the first time or the 100th time, they knew I would work on it, and all they did is they looked at me and they said, "You did good." And to me, that meant everything, because that's what gets me going in the morning, knowing that I'm making a difference and stuff. That's why I've been into real estate development and sound planning, is because I want to make a difference, and being involved with something that complex at the ground level was a huge challenge and something that I really enjoyed. But when you really see the end user really appreciate it, and Cubs fans are passionate, they would let you know right out of the box if it didn't work. The other reason I think, I believe, is my experience. Well over 35 years of real estate development experience. I have developed every type of project other than a nuclear power plant. And I have negotiated with every level of government, city, county, state, town, federal government, sovereign land. I've negotiated deals, a couple deals with them, as well as foreign governments. So I have dealt with all different levels of government. I understand what it takes to get projects approved. I've been involved in all different types of creating PUDs, TIF districts, enterprise zones, helping towns reconfigure their codes and their planning requirements because a particular product I was looking to develop didn't quite fit their format. So I understand all of that. I also, I've been involved on both the tenant side, developer side, and owner side. So I understand the performance, hard cost, soft cost financing, what it takes to pull a project together. And when there's hardships, how do you release space when leasing isn't going well? What does it cost to operate a project? So I know all those aspects. I've worked,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just have a very specific question. Being that you're from Chicago and given your extensive real estate and development experience, do you have any connections with the developers who have come into the town of Dillon?
And the what?
The developers who have interest in the town of Dillon and who are currently.
No. I've never.
Okay. So no business connections or?
Absolutely none whatsoever.
Okay.
Closest thing I worked on was, at the time my company, I wasn't actually doing this, Colorado Mills. It's probably the closest thing that the company I worked for. So.
Continue.
I think I can bring, what I think I can bring to the commission is kind of a practical business filter. You know, I work with planning commissions where they think their job is always to say no. I don't think our job is to say no. I think what our job is to take what your vision is and what the visions of the citizens and apply that to their situation. For the most part, most people are trying to do the right thing, but it doesn't maybe always fit for them. Sometimes it's a round peg in a square hole. I think what the commission's job is to help them get to their objectives while at the same time staying within the framework of what you all want. And so I think my experience of understanding that, understanding all aspects of both, as I call it, the financial end of it, but also the design and architecture, I think I can help on that, and I can help facilitate getting that pushed through so that the worst thing we can do as a commission is every time we bring something to you, because you're the ultimate decision makers, you reject it. Then we're not working together right. So I think I can bring that kind of practical filter because I've been doing it a long time and I've seen it at all different levels of government for most of my career. Also, as an architect, I believe at the end of the day, you have to read drawings. I've done the drawings myself. I can look at a plan, look at things three-dimensionally. I can understand someone comes in with a set of drawings, whether they're complete or not. So I believe I can bring that as well.
Well, thank you.
Very quick. What's your relationship with Keystone, the town?
With what?
Keystone.
Keystone. So we have been here for 25 years.
Here where?
We had a home in Settlers Creek for a townhome for about 15 years. and about 10 years, built a house in the Alders, which we enjoy. Been coming here since 1992. My sister and brother-in-law have a house on Soda Creek. I have 3 friends now that live here, so,
Thank you.
love the place.
You're
Yes,
stealing somebody else's time.
okay.
Yes, you did.
Oh, that was part of the question.
So the answer you wanted, I hope.
So before I moved here, I lived in St. Louis, and we won't hold that against you. You have to be a Cards fan here.
Yeah,
Anyway,
not true, not changing.
you have answered part of this question, but you may want to expand a little more. Please describe what you think of as the role of the planning commissioner is and who they represent. And what I heard is part of this answer, so you may want to expand a little bit.
So I think, as I look at what the commission needs to do, I think that's really 3 things. Is to help do controlled sound development, to protect the environment, and to work with you to make this a safe community. I think if you can do all those 3 things, I kind of look at this as how we get graded at the end of the day, and I think it's real simple. If we can all look to and say, have we materially improved the quality of life in Keystone, I think we've accomplished what we're supposed to do. But I think those are the 3 things. Being passionate about fly fishing, the environment means something that I've seen in rivers, what happens when they're not taken care of, and people don't, do what they're supposed to do. I also have seen the balance of how do you balance conservation with development? And so I've done many projects where I've had to do that. So land that should have been developed, we did as wetlands. Areas where we could have built, we didn't. And so perfect examples on the house that I built. I could have torn down all the trees. If you go to my house, you'll see I painstakingly looked at the trees, cost me more money, but love the property because we kept as many trees as we could. And so it's not black and white, but I think that I have the experience. I've worked with the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Interior. I've seen all aspects of the extremes, and I think, somewhere in the middle makes sense, and you got to weigh all those different things. And so there's not one answer that fits every project, but I think I have a mindset that can help you with it.
Okay.
Councilmember Thisted.
Who do you think the planning commission is primarily responsible to?
Well, I think the obvious would be you're elected by the citizens and you appoint the commissioners, so indirectly we all work for the citizens. But I think that there's a little deeper dive into that, and I think it's not that who we report to, but I think what we need to be the stewards of are sound controlled development, and like I said earlier, creating an environment that families want to be in. So it's not necessarily just the person, but it's more the idea and the programming, things that that are important to us and everybody in the community.
All right. Councilmember Clement.
Why is the land use and development code important, and how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
Well, I look at land. I look at any regulation or law that's in place. It's in place for a reason, and you have to assume that there was a lot of thought behind it. I'm not saying it shouldn't be changed, but if you're changing zoning and land development criteria every other month, and I'm exaggerating, I think you end up getting a hodgepodge of development. So then you might get some development that works a certain way and the other. So my opinion would be is if you put a lot of thought and effort into that plan, then you stick with that plan until there's a real material reason to change it. And then if there is, then you change it. But I'd be very careful. I've worked with communities where they're influenced by the latest and greatest and regret it. So I'm not saying it wouldn't change. I'm just saying it would not be something on top of us to do it.
All right. Councilmember Kerr.
Thank you for stepping up and showing your interest in this. If you were on the planning commission, you would have a responsibility for developing the master plan. Can you talk to us in your words about the role of the master plan for this particular town?
Yeah, so I think what you have to do in the master plan is, obviously, you got to start with the developments that's there. You're not going to change that. But I think what you want to do is you want to take a look at those areas that are developed, and you want to say, you want to look at each of those areas and say, are they developed to the highest and best use? From there, then, I think what you want to do is you want to layer in what are the other things you want to achieve from business development growth, but also to the environment and access to the outdoors. So I think, you know, I think that's, it's an interesting, that's the reason why I want to be on this commission, because I think that'll be a very interesting, challenging task, because I've seen some development I wouldn't approve, you know, but I think what you have to do is we got to take a look at the plan and say, this is where we want to concentrate more of our commercial development. This is where we want to concentrate residential. This is where we want to concentrate recreation, and then create a plan and stick to that plan. But I think it would be, you know, going to have painstakingly go through every community, every piece of land that's part of the community, and just figure it out and parcel out, and then, you know, start applying those particular criteria to those areas.
Thank you.
Right. And kind of a last question, in your opinion, what are the 2 or 3 most important issues facing the community, and what should the town do about it?
I think there's two. There's the more of the social, and then there's just the actual development side. I think controlling the development right now. I have seen things that just kind of happen, and so I'm concerned. One reason I'm on it, I have an investment here, and I think some of the development has been a little bit haphazard and hasn't been planned properly. So I think that's a challenge. I think making sure that this is a safe community is really important. But it comes up every day in my walk, you know, in the business I do today. You know, everything from Highway 6 to just everything within the community. I mean, every day there's something horrible going on. And not just that you can stop that, but I think we need to do everything we can to hopefully prevent it. So I think that those are the 2 biggest challenges, and I think making sure that the development respects the environment. And look at the environment in 3 buckets. There's the obvious don't touch, and then there's the obvious, yeah, you can develop it. It's that middle space where you better do the right job. And if you don't put the right filter on that to look at all aspects, you can screw up. So I think that's a challenge that I see that this commission board will have.
Councilmember Keystone?
So you mentioned that you've had an investment in the community for 25 years in the form of property ownership. I'm wondering if you've had any other interactions or investments in the community through volunteer positions or interactions with the county at large or the immediate community of Keystone.
No, this is the first time I'm stepping up to do anything. I owned the home, to be on the town home, sold it, bought the land and others, built the home.
And my other question is, what amount of time do you spend in Keystone, and are you available for the time commitment that being on the Planning and Zoning Commission entails, given that meetings are in person?
Yeah, so great question. Where I'm at right now in my career, the company I'm working for is going to be sold probably in less than 12 months. We try to get out here once a month, so great excuse to get out here once a month. So I'm not saying there might not be times that might have to do a Zoom or Teams call. I'm going to make every effort. If I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to do it. If as you read some of the testimonies and that, when I commit myself to something, I see it through. And if it gets to a point where it's not working for me or you, then we all make a decision. But I'm passionate about this. I think, it's like they say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. I think keeping, my plan is to convert into a consulting role in real estate. But I think that what's important is to keep my feet in the business itself, because I think there's things I continually learn that I can bring back. And so it's going to be that balance, but I absolutely want to stop. I do not want to be a 1K anymore. United.
Councilmember Davis.
So you've mentioned that you would like to continue consulting, and this is a question we've asked others. Do you see any potential for conflict of interest?
I would not do any consulting in Colorado or Summit County. Mine is elsewhere. Yeah, none whatsoever.
Councilmember Kerr.
To better understand the way you think, you refer to balancing development and conservation and respecting the environment. You specifically talk about 3 buckets, not touching that, that's clear. That can be developed, and then you said there was a middle space. Can you help us understand what you're thinking about when you say that?
Well, by the middle space, there's these areas, let me see what would be a good example. Here's one, I'll give an example of a project I worked on once. There was a wetland on the property, but the wetland was created because the highway department didn't clean out the culvert pipe. The culvert pipe plugged up, and it created a wetland. To me, that's an in-between space. Yes, technically it's a wetland, but the situation was it was created not by nature, it was because man kind of messed up. And so, to me, an area like that would be in the middle area. I would also say that sometimes what happens is if development already exists around an area, like completely surrounding it, I think those are areas you got to think about. Are we really protecting something or are we not? And so that would be another area that could be in the middle and have to evaluate. But like when I look at, for instance, we're right up to that Snake River there, and the Conservancy, the willows there were all, moose and everybody. That to me, that's a protected corridor. You don't touch that ever. But there's pockets elsewhere that maybe development makes sense. But there's not, I think, I might not be totally answering your question, but I think you have to actually look at the particular piece, and I think that's going to be part of the master plan. I think we have to look at all of those pieces in advance, so not reacting to a development at the time that we've already thought through it. So then you don't get into this, that developer wanting, well, I want to do this. Well, no, we don't think you should. And so I think by establishing it up front, we can hopefully keep down the conflict.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, Steve, thank you very much for coming here today. I appreciate your time.
Okay. I don't know if this helps, but there's you can pass this around. Here's just some more pictorial scale type of projects to work on. So if that helps, I appreciate it. So anyway, thank you, and looking forward to a favorable response.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For asking precisely what it was.
Hold on, Coach, we have time. We should use it.
Sure, you had.
Give them an opportunity
We're back.
to explain the thought
Ran
process.
What?
Wait a minute.
We're ahead of schedule.
Don't get too excited.
We're 3 minutes left.
Okay. We lost a minute there.
I think that's our goal. Give them max opportunity to
Well, that Max,
communicate to
Max
us.
is to get the communication accomplished about
I do.
the background.
But Lindsay may have lost track of it.
Wow, Lindsay's killing our time.
Lindsay.
Oh, it's really snowing now. Woo!
We'll get another this weekend, maybe.
That's what they say.
Or
They're saying.
is that what they're saying?
I'll
Yes,
ski it if it snows and I'll enjoy it, but I'd rather it be bike season now.
I just got my dad's patio cleared. It took me 2 hours.
Early.
Oh, and I have had the doors open for the past 2 days. My dogs have been able to.
Oh, David, thank you very much for coming today. This is a very consequential decision that the Planning Commission is going to be making, and probably one of the most important ones that we've made so far is appointing the Planning Commission, and I appreciate you volunteering for it. As we get started, could you give us a short biography of yourself, particularly as it relates to qualifications for the Planning Commission? Tell us why you're interested in serving on the Planning Commission, and also give us an idea of where you live or own in Keystone.
Okay, too many questions in a row.
Three.
Should have had a cheat sheet. So I am David Koch, MD. I'm a retired radiologist. We first came to Keystone for the ski season of 98, 99, and then came back in August that year and bought a home. It was a second home. Became a full-time home in 2006. Both of my children went to the Summit School District, both graduated from Summit High School. And we went through a big house remodel and addition in that house. And then the kids moved away, haven't been back so much. But we've decided we want to make this, our forever home for as long as our health holds out. And so we're in the process of building a new home just down the street, so to speak, from where we were. So just off Montezuma Road. So I have an interest in seeing, I think, reasonable development of the community. We've been involved, my wife more than I have, in the whole Keystone incorporation process for some time. We've been involved in church and social activities and school activities over the years. And I think I've probably demonstrated proficiencies in reading materials and learning tasks at hand. Gretchen might get a smile out of this. I was going to say something about that as a radiologist, there's a textbook and there's black and white. An x-ray should show an abnormality, but there's shades of gray and there's an art to interpreting an x-ray to what the book says, to what you see, to try and come up with a determination. So I understand the role to be interpreting the rules and regulations, trying to make recommendations based on those without a whole lot of bias as to, I'm pro-development, anti-development. I think there needs to be a balance. Over the years of living here, I think there have been things that, we were very pro-incorporation, that I think there's great opportunities for us by being a town, by having the local input. I guess I'd like to be part of that, but within the recognition of the council is going to have to make the final decisions based on recommendations, and I'm going to make recommendations based on staff and their help in trying to understand what are the probably reams of rules and regulations that exist.
All right, Councilmember Davis.
So, I think you've partially answered this question, but please describe what you think of the role of a planning commissioner is and who they represent. And it's okay if you use it from a radiological perspective. You've got points from me that way.
None of us will understand it.
I might.
Ask me that again. I got lost in the talk about radiology. I wasn't sure how I was going to spin that back into the conversation.
You don't have to do it. Anyway, describe what you think of as the role of the planning commissioner. If you were selected, what would be your role and who do you represent?
The role is to read the materials, try to understand the applications, what is the desired goal outcome, what are the pros and cons of the proposal, in light of the policies that the town has established for development, for planning things. And I honestly can't answer the question. I don't know that I know. Is it just entirely residential and commercial, just building things? But planning also probably involves the recreational areas. Does it involve the rec paths and that sort of thing? So I imagine there's going to be quite a bit of getting up to speed, reading the things. So hard to say where I am on that. But I'm representing, I think, the council in preliminarily trying to look at it. I have more time than you do to look at this little pile of papers and materials, you know, with the staff. In my attending planning meetings for the county in the past for various projects, I went to a number of meetings before it ever got to the Board of County Commissioners for the Kindred project. So I sort of lived through that, a couple other projects, going to the meetings, looking at stuff, not an expert, but trying to understand that the bias is not from pro or con for anything in particular, but just see whether it meets. And, you know, I guess I'm allowed to open my mouth and say, my personal opinion is such, but as the planning, you know, being part of the planning commission, my recommendation would be is this meets the criteria, and give that to you, and then you guys have to figure out yes or no on it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Liston.
You alluded to this already, so feel free to give a brief answer, but who do you think a planning commission is primarily responsible to?
The town council.
All right. Councilmember Cornett.
Why is the land use and development code important, and how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
I believe I recall that one of the things that was discussed in incorporation that early on, or not immediate, but early on, was going to be coming up with some kind of a master plan for where we think we're going with Keystone. So as part of that, you've got to have the land use. My biased opinion from 99 on is that Keystone is getting pretty well filled up. I don't know where the opportunities for more development exists. Is that going to be part of the town policy? Is the town going to be looking to annex other properties as it gets fuller? So I think there has to be, through the incorporation process, there was talk of we need to have some balance of affordable housing. We need to have a balance of the resort. There needs to be first and second homeowners. There has to be people that live and work here that maybe don't need to be in the affordable housing. All of that has to be balanced out to try and meet what is hopefully a continuing forward progress of the community, rather than stagnating or having people move away because they can't afford to live here, or things become too onerous to be able to run a business or build a home.
Thank you. Councilmember Kerr.
Thank you for stepping up, throwing your hat in the ring, and thank you for mentioning the master plan. Could you, in your words, explain to us how you anticipate the role of the master plan for the town of Keystone? You've alluded to that.
Yeah, I think you guys will have to be determining what your vision is of the master plan, and then staff and the planning commission has to help execute it. Do I feel like, is it my role to be advising the council as to, I mean, I think the council more than likely will be having meetings, getting community involvement as to what the master plan is, and then I'm just the guy on the assembly line turning the wrench, trying to make it accomplished.
Let me ask a variation on that. Given your interest in planning over the last few years, especially with respect to Kindred, and you mentioned going to planning meetings, what lessons about the role of a master plan would you bring here?
I'm not sure you want me to talk specifics of what I thought pros and cons of the Kindred project?
Well, no, I'm not looking for you to address that, but what was your sense of how the master plan guided decision-making or not? How's that?
Well, I don't honestly know that there was a master plan from the perspective of county planning department or from the county commissioners, because I don't think there, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there was a master plan that they had for Keystone. I think it was an area that was for development, that when I first came in '99, that was supposed to be a Marriott. And I was going to be living a stone's throw from a Marriott, a five-star hotel. It was going to be really taking Keystone up a notch in terms of destination skiing kind of thing. And it's this many years later, we're getting to that stage. So I think my personal bias would be that I wish there would have been more pushing for that it was maybe part of a plan. Lived through different variations. I can remember when there was a time that the old gondola was going to be turned into kind of a people mover between Mountain House and River Road. A lot of these things were individual little things that might have been from the resort or from maybe a developer, but I don't think, my perception is there was no master plan for Keystone from the perspective of either the resort or the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is, in your opinion, what are the 2 or 3 most important issues facing our community? And what should we do about it? What should the town do about it?
Planning and development wise, or just anything?
Anything.
I don't know whether I'll be involved in roads at all, but this winter has been a bear on our main thoroughfares. I'm surprised I haven't had a flat tire or a broken wheel, so I hope that's a priority for the town, is improving the roads. Because my location typically involves going to town and crossing Razor Drive. And the number of times that I've stopped there and other cars have stopped for the flashing yellow light and people still go whizzing by and pedestrians almost get creamed, that's high on my list. I guess I'd say, personally, I'm fairly fiscally conservative. I kind of hope that the town generates the revenues that it needs to do things like addressing Razor Drive, pedestrian safety, and roads and bridges, not so much bridges, but roads. I think those are my biggest concerns.
Good, thank you. Any other council members have anything else?
Anything else you want to add that we should understand now that we've had this discussion?
Do I have a minute to explain shades of gray?
Not unless you want all of us calling when you get x-rays.
I've been retired for a while, so I gave up all my medical licenses, so I don't try to read anybody's anything anymore.
Well, again, thank you very much, David, for coming on in. We'll be making a decision later this evening, I believe.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I had 5 minutes.
New record.
our objectives. Thank you.
Oh, we could get really ahead. So next one's here.
That worked well, because it had that limited footprint.
I thought for a minute-
Evening, everyone.
Good evening. I thought for a minute, Peter, you were gonna sit back in your normal chair back there.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean this one? If you like.
No, please, hey, have a seat. Well, thank you for volunteering. As I've explained to the other candidates, this is probably the most consequential decision that the town council will be making so far. And it has potential to impact the future of this community for years. And so as we get started, could you please give us a short biography of yourself, particularly as it relates to your qualifications to be a member of the Planning Commission? Tell us why you're interested in serving, and tell us why you're interested in serving on the commission. And while you're at it, please let us know where you live in Keystone.
Okay. For those who don't remember me, I'm Pete Ballard. I've been a resident and full-time here in Keystone for about 4 years now. I've had a home in Summit County for, oh my gosh, 30 years. And I've been a resident in Colorado for almost 40 years now. So long story short, I consider Colorado a bit of my home and kind of like it here. My background in terms of technical background has been in a wide variety of different kind of companies, heavily technical, but in those positions, I found that the background I got working with a large variety of people, both as a team member, an individual contributor, a team lead, and a manager, I found that that'd be directly applicable for learning how people work together, how to work with people, what processes they use, and very much the tools. In other words, I'm a people process tools kind of guy in a background. I also had a lot of technical background, a wide variety. Nuclear engineering, telecommunications, design software ground systems for satellite systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Large scale systems as well as a number of small ones. The point is not any one of those necessarily directly applies to the position, but it shows that I, as an engineer, which is in my blood since I was a kid, that's an important ingredient, is to be able to learn and adapt in a wide variety of areas, going from nuclear to telecommunications to a variety to ground systems for, like I said, a satellite imaging system and company. Shows you that I have a lot of background. One key thing in the middle of all that was a stint with working on the board at the, it's a long title, so I'll bear with me here. It's the LESAC Energy Sustainability Committee. Its goal in life was to advise this town of Lafayette, i.e. Lafayette, Colorado, on issues with regard to energy. And that covered a huge wide range of things. Anywhere from how to put something on a window on houses that had very horrible energy usage to working with the town to manage their 3 largest solar community collectors to how do you manage the town building to improve its energy usage as well as the town as a whole. So I've learned in that position not only the characteristics of working with a town, but also working with a team of volunteers who are very passionate about energy, which is near and dear to my heart also. Key reason why I'm interested in helping is I've found that as watching you guys work, and it's a lot of work, I appreciate the efforts that you're doing, but I also realize that people have to step up and help, and I want to be that person to help the town of Keystone in its
at best, I call it the birthing pains, but it's a lot more than that. But establish the foundations that we need over time to grow our town in the way people want. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. Hopefully I covered your main areas.
Where do you live in Keystone?
Oh, excuse me, I'm in the ranch area, Keystone Ranch.
All right, Councilmember Davis.
So please describe, and it sounds like you've got some experience that would be helpful here. Please describe what you think the role of a planning commissioner is and who they represent.
The commission as a whole is a mechanism to offload, in my mind, the council for the duties for analyzing what is needed, wanted, and preferred with regards to the town's characteristics, long-term and short-term planning. In other words, potentially, and this is up to you what you guys want, laying out what the replacement would be for the master plan, both at the county level, which we may or may not inherit, and also which is as detailed as the Snake River individual basin plan. We would want to take a look at those and understand what to do with that. I think it would be part of the responsibility of the council is to examine that and also collect or gather information from the town. And when I mean the town, there's an awful lot of characteristics of that, which include things not just citizens and residents, but workers, employees, visitors, and businesses. But also one key area that is sometimes forgotten is our neighbors. We have neighbors, and we cannot live alone in a vacuum. We do not have walls. We do not want walls. We want to work together with these neighbors to understand. And there will be differences of opinion of how these different things should be used, just as the county has set up the individual basins and their plans. And then that the high level county group that oversees individuals that they arbitrate between those. So it's a job, I think, is we would probably be part of also the go-between a little bit to some of those other county level groups. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that works today. I tried to find a little bit online, but it's a little bit hard to decipher the details of how that works. And it may be up to you guys to say that's not what we want to do. And so it's a great deal of the responsibilities to be established by Mr. Hirsch, but more importantly, you guys, to decide what are the boundaries and like I said, my people process tools. So what are the people I'd be dealing with? What are the processes that you would like to see used? How kind of mechanism for communications, and then what tools we would use. That's a little less important around here because we're a little bit new. We don't have a whole lot of fundamental background. But the GIS system that the county uses is one of the most important pieces and tools you could possibly have to make it a communications to not only ourselves between our teams, but also the outside teams, organizations, citizens, etc.
I feel quite redundant asking my question. Is it
Go ahead.
council? You want me to still ask it?
Go ahead and ask it.
Rewind. I'll repeat parts
Feel
that
free to
are important.
repeat and be brief if you would like. Who do you think Planning Commission is primarily responsible to?
It's a kind of a pyramid or a stool, 3 parts, or maybe more legs than that. The committee, the people that I just mentioned, the organizations, and not just the ones that we directly report to, but also, like I said, the neighbors, which is one key area that sometimes is forgotten. And there's other responsible organizations. The state of Colorado has all sorts of rules associated with it. There's a whole lot of codes that I am only lightly familiar with, and after 2 cups of coffee, maybe 3, trying to read through some of the codes. Okay, I get the idea of what we're doing. We're inheriting this, we're using this, we're bringing up to date. And we're actually doing better than some counties in terms of the dates. So it's a multi-legged stool. But in the end, the primary one is you guys.
Thank you.
And Hirsch being kind of a focal point for that voice.
Councilmember Clement.
Why is the land use and development code important, and how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
Double-edged sword on the second part of the question first. Doing it too fast causes great pain in the organizations who have to enforce it, but more importantly, actually implement it, i.e. on the ground doing the work. I've seen cases where even in the county, they had to essentially back off the accelerated rate in invoking certain kinds of plans having to do with the energy parts of the plans, and said, you know, that maybe is a little too much. We've got too much learning curve for the guy who, or the gals who are working on maybe building an individual home or a new condo. If you do it too fast, you have a problem. You do it too slow, you're not keeping up with energy codes and key things that have to do with safety. So part of that question has to be a balance between how fast you go, how do you help them go that fast, versus yanking people around too much and changing too quickly. And now, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Why is the land use and development code important, and if you feel you've already covered that?
A little bit. From my perspective, I've seen both good and bad on the experience with regards to managing the codes and the plans. I've seen things that have intentions that essentially backfire. Here's a particular example where it's a tough decision, not an easy, obvious one. Person A buys a plot of land, builds a single family home, it's an acre. Its neighbor builds it, you know, they realize the neighbor's been there for 5, 10 years, it's a 1 acre, it's there's a new plan in place where they want to decrease the load on external land, what they call the transportable development, I'm trying to remember TDRs, I'm trying to remember the acronym, has to do with the ability to rezone external land, take the ability to use that density and put it in a place that's more appropriate. Go, that's a tough one. Where's it more appropriate? The county has adopted the plans to bring a lot of the mines, former mines and other areas outside there could be built on, and bring it in and use that to increase the density of the towns. But if I'm on my little local view and I've got a neighbor and the guy next to me decides he wants to sell to a developer, and instead of a 1 unit per acre area, now all of a sudden they've transported that requirement and that ability to go dense to maybe a 25 unit condo complex / townhome complex. That's happened just right up the road, not that long ago, which is in kind of mid development right now. Neither side really likes the idea of what's happened. The poor owner who bought knowing that that was a R1 as a neighbor now has an R20 as a neighbor. Guilt. But the large view says, wait a second, I don't want 40 different little developments sprinkled all over some of my backcountry area. There's a perfect example where the codes and the intent of the codes are going to help define what's needed and how we manage that kind of thing. And sometimes it's case by case, but the codes have to be established in order to make a sound view for the people who buy the land and develop the land, and or go to densification, which is one of my not so favorite almost 4-letter words, which happens. We go vertical. We run out of land, we're now, okay, we'll go up. Help, hopefully.
Yeah, that was a good answer.
That was a good answer. In your opinion, what are the 2 or 3 most important issues facing the Keystone community, and what should the town do about it?
Well, I have my omniscient self, I can think of a few. One of the keys, and I kind of alluded to it in my last conversation, was how do we establish and define effectively a contract with our owners of land and developers, yet have some flexibility to say, well, wait a second, we didn't really want to do that. What does that mean? How do we balance these 2 problems of increased development, increased density with the existing need to preserve, as a lot of the charters and the other pieces say, preserve the lifestyle of Keystone. And what does that mean to different people? So part of it would be to establish an understanding, look at what is out there today, look at what even Silverthorne is doing today, which they have this, an updated master plan ongoing, if I'm not mistaken. They're gathering some data right now off of a website. That's a piece of it. Couple of things that are very hard to handle that really are somewhat tied to the planning, but I don't know enough about it because I don't know how much land we own. The joys of our highway going through the middle of our city, which causes both safety, traffic problems, etc. And coupled with that one is the lack of ability to share the plans coming from our biggest business in town and their parking plans, which are going to radically change parking patterns, and they already did. We had a case where they took a parking lot away and said, oh, we'll do like-to-like transfers. No, it wasn't like-to-like, but the code didn't allow to consider the characteristic of, oh, one is a walking distance to get to everything, the other is a bus. Oh, one is a plan associated with required busing, but it doesn't run all the time. So the usefulness of that parking went way down. And now we have two 400-unit complex instead. We can't do anything with that one. That happened to be outside the Keystone boundaries. It was done by the county. But it tells me there are considerations that we need to watch out for in the language and the conversations we have with our developers to say, yeah, you're meeting the letter of the law, but not the intent, like parking at an individual area. This one development across here, I happen to notice that it's all tandem parking. If you know what tandem parking means, is every single time, 50% of the time, you have to back out and get the car out of the way so you can get the other car out. Go. And there is no other parking allotted on that area. So there is no place to put the other car for a while so you can get backed out. So you get a case where they're met the letter of the law, which said tandem parking is allowed in the council parking per unit. Gulp. But the practicality, when you look at it, says it's going to be a nightmare for the owners, especially peak periods. This is an example where you have to you're going to have some history, you're going to have to learn, you're going to have to update certain things and rule accordingly and try to make sure you get ahead of it enough that developers understand your needs and can accommodate. Most of them are pretty good about it. But there'll be a few who are always going to say, well, you know, I only want 5 foot. Well, on that 1 acre lot, now I've got a condo complex 5 feet from the border from this poor guy or gal who bought the house next door. Go. I'm not saying there's an absolute solution for this. I'm just saying these are the kinds of things that the commission hopefully doesn't have to deal with, but a planning group such as this is being established can help with and help establish better rules and reviews and then create a rapport with the developers and not come down and saying this is the way it is. Because they may have very ingenious solutions for some of these things, which I have seen in some places.
Do you have time for question 5?
Sorry.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
So appreciate you stepping up to volunteer. I wonder if you can talk about the role, speaking of the planning tools available, of the master plan for the town of Keystone that this commission will help develop.
Two parts of that. One is how does it get developed? I'm worried about that separately, but I invoke, let's reuse as much as we have and not spend 6 months to a year trying to come up with the first iteration of it. But rather every couple of years, going back to your plan, you know, how often do you change it? Every 2 to 5 years, look at the master plan and stick to it. We'll need to do one fairly soon because we have not adopted one as far as I understand. All we've adopted is to bring in the existing codes and the zoning. So those are still there, but the plan overall, which would help guide changes to those,
How so?
don't exist yet today. And I envision them as the primary guide. If it doesn't show in this plan, then it needs to be understood that there is no foundation for it. And we have to be very careful about things that come from out of the blue. Sometimes it's because there's been a massive change. There's some flood that happens, all of a sudden you rearrange whatever. Yeah, you're gonna have to adjust that. But you can use it as a shield, but you can also use it as a platform that says, how do we invoke each one of these plans? How does the code set, the zoning set, and rulings by the commission as well as you, how do they map to these? And without mapping to it, it's a useless document. In other words, if you can't see these three areas affecting something, it shouldn't be in there, or it's pablum. It's maybe nice to say, but it's not in a section that can be enforced and or encouraged or shared with the public so they can see what we're trying to do, what we want to do. It's also a very good way to communicate with the public because they can say, hey, look, we follow that. This is, go look at this section. Does that match what you want at a high level? Because you're going to get, some people have absolutely no idea what development looks like and have strong opinions about, I don't want that 5-story thing in my view shed. Is there anything in the plans or the guides that can help me map and understand that? So I consider the code will put people asleep, and it's going to be hard. But for an interim, I view the plan as the primary communications mechanism to say what we want, not how we want it.
Who's we in this scenario?
That whole group I talked about, all the way from citizens, residents, business owners, workers, visitors, and also our neighbors. It's a good way to say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. What are you doing?
Yeah, you talk to it as a communication tool to all those stakeholders.
Yeah.
From we. Who is we? Who has?
The authors of that document. And I don't know how you guys want to lay it out. I would assume, or I guess, one option, not the only way to do it, would be to have the commission get together, review existing documents from the county level and the Snake River planning level, i.e. the basin level, and look at it and say, are there things that are just gut feel, don't want, do want, and then we come up with a tentative recommendation. They call it tentative because we haven't gotten any input from all those other organizations yet. But we need to establish something. If you open it up completely, usually what you get is a whole lot of craziness, and it's very hard to manage. But if you put an outline to it using existing documents or techniques, you can then use that and say, hey, what about these areas? You can set up a questionnaire, you can go to places, you can have town halls. There's a lot of different mechanisms to get communications coming in. Then the committee and or other designated groups can take that and say, here are the areas we'd like to change. This is what we'll call the Keystone Master Plan. Then we work with you guys to decide what the appropriate process is to get that approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the council? Peter, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your time.
Sure. And thank you for your time.
You got a couple more, any more left, or one more?
Yep.
Oh, there's some right here.
I want to know.
Yeah, those were some thoroughly considered responses. Wow. Have you seen the HBO series Chernobyl?
No, but is it good?
It's good. I just was going to make a nuclear engineering joke.
Oh, you still channel that?
Yeah, if you haven't seen the series, it will make sense.
Oh. Oh, I forgot it was a series of them. That was a while ago, right?
A year or two ago.
Oh.
I feel like it's recent.
Oh,
It's a worthy watch.
scary or?
fairly historically accurate for a drama.
These two shall
Yes,
I don't think that watching a documentary or a docudrama about the Soviet Union would ever instill confidence.
Well, that's right. That's why I watched it.
Wendy, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
So, this decision that the council's going to be making on the Planning and Zoning Commission is probably one of the most consequential decisions that we've made so far, because it will have such far-reaching impact on the future of the community. So we really appreciate you volunteering for the commission. As we start this, could you give us a short biography of yourself as it relates to qualifications to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and why you're interested in the town of Keystone's Planning Commission, and where you live?
Okay. I have semi-retired from 44 years in the real estate development and consulting business, involved in many projects as a principal of a St. Louis-based development firm. And my background is real estate development and finance in general. My degree is in finance, and my major was real estate and urban economics. And I love real estate. I love all the moving parts, and I especially love the development rights entitlement aspect of real estate planning and development. I have been a commissioner for the city of St. Louis, a legal commissioner on the St. Louis Development Corporation for 9 years, appointed by the mayor. I was also a planning commissioner in suburban Creve Coeur, where I raised my kids, and when the last one left the nest, so did I. We lived urban for 10 years, and the mayor found me there and in the city, and that was a great way to serve. In fact, the mayor of Creve Coeur is a long time, the mayor that appointed me to the commission in Creve Coeur is a longtime owner here in Keystone. We're still good friends today. I have been a homeowner in Keystone since 1995. We built a townhome in Starfire and had that ownership until 2012, when my husband and I had a lot of fun watching the market bottom out. And we're living in a single-family home at 75 Wild Irishman Road that backs up to the spine of Keystone, which is the Snake River. And we bought the house knowing, believing, and praying that we would be full-time residents retire here. And that actually happened in December of 2020. We don't have any other residences. We're here full-time, and yes, I'm very sick of winter right now. Girls golf trip next week to Florida. But I have very actively engaged in the county. I'm chairing the initiative to bring senior housing to Summit County, and we staying in Summit. We're a not-for-profit that is we organized in 2018, and we are in fact partnering with Summit County, meaning they're going to convey ground to us in Lake Hill, that big, hairy, audacious goal of 45 acres on Dillon Dam Road. And I've been working on it for about, full 4 years, almost full time now. So we'll see. It's a very complex entitlement, as you can imagine, but
were an anchor in phase one in the planning. And I've had a seat at the planning table with Norris Design. And I like practicing my craft without all the complexity of deliverables and things attached. And it's been very, very interesting and challenging. So my interest in the inaugural commission of Keystone, a place that I love because I've been here for over 30 years, and my husband, in fact, was with Ross and Purina most of his career life, and as the head of HR, he used to negotiate the ski patrol contracts here and so forth. So we're pretty Keystone biased people, and I want to see smart development. I want to see multi-generational development work here, and I'm not happy necessarily with where density is going, and when I hear trucks on 6 and see the craziness in the high season, I would like to know that I'm an engaged citizen that cares about those things. So, sorry for the long answer. I think I answered it.
No, good, thank you. Councilmember Davis.
So, Wendy, we have something in common. I lived in St. Louis for 41 years, 16 in Grief Corps.
Yeah.
So at some other time, we'll talk about where your kids went to high school.
Right down the street, MICDS. Yeah, that's what matters, I know.
Yeah, it's a St. Louis thing. Anyway, please describe what you think of as the role of a planning commissioner and who they represent.
Well, the planning commissioner represents the town and what the people want for the town. And I also believe that a planning commissioner has a pretty significant fiduciary responsibility. I'm going to sound like a physician here, to do no harm and to thoroughly vet proposed projects and ask the right questions and have a knowledge base and background to do so. I feel pretty strongly about the experience, if you will, of commissioners. And I also think that there's a lot of eyes on what's happening now in the town of Keystone. And my particular interest is the inaugural commission because I have such a background in serving on commissions like this.
Wonderful.
Councilmember Piston.
So you may have alluded to this, so I apologize for the redundancy, but who do you think the planning commission is primarily responsible to?
Well, the residents of Keystone and the elected town council members. Because I would assume that every project vetted by P&Z ultimately gets approved by the town council, and I must admit I haven't read all the organizational documents of the town, but you know, I think it's a very difficult thing when a commission, a planning commission approves a project and then it doesn't get through council. And you know, you have to really understand what the grassroots, you know, neighborhood, neighbor mentality and attitude is of a proposed project before it even goes to a public hearing. I've been on the developer side. I was a developer. Conrad Properties, a well-known luxury developer, residential and mixed-use developer in St. Louis area, and I made a lot of presentations to the planning commissions, and you gotta know how to manage any and all objections.
Councilmember Clement.
Why is the land use and development code important, and how often or frequently do you think it should be amended?
Boy, it's a project by project basis, and I would hope that the land use code, which is newly drafted, and what you see is what you get, and your boundaries are set, that candidly, there wouldn't be much need to change or put variances in the code unless it's a specific use where you want to make sure that the development rights agreement and the ordinance written for that legal entitlement of a parcel of land or an existing property that is going to have some kind of adaptive reuse. If there's something that relates to it operationally or potentially as a nuisance because it would, involve traffic and et cetera, there might be a need for some case-by-case variances that address those peculiarities to a certain property. I mean, I've been involved in ordinances where there were, several variances, exceptions that had to be acknowledged.
Councilmember Kerr.
Thank you for stepping up to volunteer. One of the jobs that you would be involved in would be developing a master plan for the town of Keystone. Can you tell us what you think that the role of that master plan would be here?
Well, first of all, I would assume it's professionally administered and led, that it's not commissioners that are coming up with a plan. Certainly commissioners would be at all the planning meetings. I've been involved in a lot of master planning efforts, and it's a very long, drawn-out process, and it needs to be done with professional expertise. I've actually sat through some of the sessions for the county because they're, of course, updating their master plan now. I was asked to do that by Jason Deeds, the housing director. I think I would be very much an advocate of not having a bunch of convoluted language. In other words, planning 101 type language. I think we really know and feel and are very dedicated residents here in Keystone of what we are and how different it is at different parts of the year. And we should know who we want to house, how we can affordably house, cradle to grave, if you will, for successful aging in place too, because I think that's a very significant population shift here. I've met a lot of my age cohort here that have decided to retire and live active. So I would frankly like to understand, the timing and the time commitment to be involved in that.
Okay, that's
master
fair.
planning
And
effort.
it's kind of beyond the scope of this discussion. It's a
Uh-huh.
good one. It's a good question. How do you see it being used? How does a master plan guide decisions in the future?
Well, I think it is something that with each and every submission to the commission, it will be an acknowledged reference of, this is whatever part of the master plan, and it fits. In other words, it's not published and then shelved. It is a living, breathing document, and I think it should be part of the criteria of, you know, does this proposal, does this plan presentation abide by the goals and objectives of the master plan?
Okay, thank you.
In your opinion, what are the two or three most important issues facing the Keystone community, and how should the town deal with them?
I think from my perspective of, you know, over 25 years here, the Vail Resort's impact on Keystone and constant need to be really effectively and aggressively partnered with them on what we're doing, what they're doing. Of course, none of their holdings are part of our town, so.
That's not true.
Well, I know there's little carve-outs.
No. Mountain House is not included, everything else is.
The golf course?
The golf courses are not, but.
Right.
But from a residential standpoint, River Run, the River Run base area, all that's part of the town.
Okay, I was aware of that. And that, because that's, do they actually own all that? I don't need to get off, okay.
Oh, no, that's a big deal.
There's some investment ownership in that, so that's why I'm asking, okay. So I think that would be something very important to me as a commissioner to understand where Vail's next step is, if you will, as far as their improvements, because we're anchored by, you know, what they own and operate here. We're the destination. I think the second issue is very much housing affordability and quality, and that extends to workforce, families, young families. I keep talking about aging in place, but I think it's really a factor here. And what services are affordable and available. I mean, we of course badly need a child care center. I know that's supposedly coming at Wintergreen. Thirdly, I think it's really the essential quality of life from the perspective of not the 1-2 week a year vacationer, but somebody who lives here full time, pays taxes here and votes here.
Thank you. Any other questions? No St. Louis questions?
I evidently know a lot of this.
We'll do that some other time.
We hear the St. Louis connection all the time.
It's here like crazy.
But how do you feel about the Chiefs?
Pardon?
Ignore that question.
Never fighting words.
Okay, so
Oh, okay, well, Midwest.
Randy, thank you very much for coming in.
All right, well, thank you.
It's going to be a difficult decision.
It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet all of you. And good luck. You have a tough job that requires a lot of time, and, you know, it's exciting in itself, so. All right, well, I'm gonna go find out who the draft picks are, okay?
You're not talking about the Broncos,
I have a Buffalo Bills fan.
Oh.
Because we lost our team. All right, nice to meet you all, thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy you were.
Given the time, Would anyone like us to take a brief recess?
Yes,
Yes.
How about a 10-minute recess? We can meet at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Recess. And as a reminder, we're going to have 7 positions to fill and 2 alternates to fill for this first appointment. And we'll be providing staggered terms, 4 regular members and 1 alternate to serve 3-year terms, and 3 regular members and 1 alternate will serve 2-year terms.
I'm sorry.
Wait a second, do that again.
4 regular members and 1 alternate will be on a 3-year term, and 3 members and 1 alternate will be on 2-year terms.
Okay.
All right, for the staggered. For the process of appointment of the individuals to the Planning and Zoning Commission members, I'll first call for nominations from the floor. This means I'll ask the council members to verbally nominate individuals for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And you can nominate more than 1. And once there are no further nominations, I will announce that the opportunity for nominations is closed. And on the closing of the nominations, I will announce the name of each person who has been nominated. I will then ask the council members to fill out ballots for the regular Planning and Zoning Commission position that serves the 3-year term. And there are 4 positions on that. If there are no ties, the individuals receiving the 4 highest number of votes will be appointed to the 3-year term and will handle any ties with the revote. Next, the council members will fill out ballots for the regular Planning and Zoning Commission position that will serve a 2-year term. There are 3 of these positions. If there are no ties, the individuals receiving the highest number of votes will be appointed to the 2-year term. The last step will be to vote for the remaining 2 individuals for the alternate position. Council members will be asked to vote for the individual to receive the 3-year term as the alternate. The person who receives the most votes will be appointed to the 3-year term. And then if we have additional nominees, that person would be appointed for the remaining position. What I'd like to propose, and it was suggested.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
So I just want to understand what you just said. So the 3rd vote for the alternates, we're going to have a vote for the 3-year term. If we have 2 people nominated, the person who gets the highest number of votes gets elected, and the second person by default gets the 2-year term. Is that what you're saying?
I was going to suggest, that's what I was just going to suggest.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought that's what you said.
That the person with the highest number of votes would get the, that to be elected in this case, the highest number of votes would get the 3-year term, assuming they have a majority vote of all the council members. That's acceptable to you.
Another point of
And for the 2-year term, it would again be that person to be elected would have to have a majority vote of all council members.
So would it be 2 different votes?
No, 1 vote. But if someone doesn't get 4 votes or 3 votes, that person would not be elected.
So we'll determine the votes after the first.
Yes, after the first.
So we'll know who we can work with on
Yes,
the
that's
second.
right.
Okay.
We'll each vote will be individual.
Clarification on voting rules. Say for potential positions, 6 people are nominated. As we're not rank order voting, can council member choose to vote for any number of those?
If there are 6 people, you may vote for 4 people in the first election, for the first round. You would then, in the second round, vote for 3 people. And the third round, you would vote for 2 people.
Okay.
And you don't have to vote for all 4, you can vote for less than 4.
Right, but if there's 8 people nominated, I can only vote for 4.
Correct. All right, is that clear? All right.
Another point of clarification that you may be getting ready to address, but in relation, we obviously have the candidates who were interviewed tonight, but we have 2 additional candidates who are not present. They're also part of the potential nomination slate as well.
You can nominate anyone you would like, whether they were interviewed or not.
Okay.
As long as they've volunteered to be on the planning commission.
Which all of these did.
And all these here have done, anyone who submitted an application.
Thank you.
All right, is that clear? Slight modification, Mr. Hirsch, as you heard. All right. I'll now like to open up nominations for the planning commission.
Are we talking 3 years now?
No, we'll take nominations to be members of the planning commission,
And then,
and then it will be for all positions. And then we'll whittle down.
Wait, are we specifically nominating for the 3-year term?
No, we're not. We're nominating for anyone for the planning commission now, and then we'll have one vote. The first vote will select the 4-year members. The second vote will select the 3-year members, and the third vote will select the alternates.
I'm just unclear on how we choose who we're selecting. So we can select from the entire slate, got it.
A flyer slate and you can vote for 4.
Gotcha.
All right. So, who are any nominations for the planning commission?
Yes,
Councilmember Kerr.
I nominate Kathy Rogg, Tim Wading, John Hagenow, Steve Jacobson, David Koch, Peter Madland, Wendy Tim, Nick William,
Lejeune.
and Melanie Wojtash for the planning commission.
So you've nominated the whole slate.
You nominated. All
We
right.
entertain additional. I don't know if that's,
If-
vote on that before we entertain others.
Oh, you can nominate anyone you desire.
So, anybody else?
Wait, did we just
do
nominate
we
all
all
nine?
nominate?
Yes, all 9 have been nominated.
No, we're sure else.
But there are others you might have in mind.
Yeah.
But nobody else who, someone else.
All right. Hearing no more nominations, the nominations are closed. And I would ask you all to take a ballot, which I believe you have in front of you. You need to put your name on the top of the ballot, or you're voting.
And these are not rank order, it's just 4 names.
4 names, not rank order.
And which one was the first one here? 3-year term, right?
And this is for the 3-year term.
And who's doing the math here?
Lindsay.
Do you want us to?
I'll collect you count.
Perfect.
I was going to have some clerk to it, that's all right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Clerk, please count the votes. Was there anyone online, Rick?
We had 3 or 4.
Any online now?
One.
No, I don't. Well, there's one.
All right.
Mic is on.
Is the mic back on?
Yes.
All right.
There are 3 votes for Kathy Rogg, 1 vote for Tim Keating, 3 votes for John Hagenow, 2 votes for Steve Jacobson, 2 votes for David Koch, 4 votes for Peter Madland, 3 votes for Wendy Tim, 1 vote for Nick Bujon, and 1 vote for Melanie Wojtosh.
Could you please summarize that for the top vote getters?
The top 4 vote getters are Kathy Rogg, John Hagenow, Peter Madland, and Wendy Tim.
No ties.
Can you say those again and their numbers, those top 4?
Yes, so Peter Madland has 4, Wendy Tim has 3, Kathy Rogg has 3, and John Hagenow has 3.
All right. So
It sounds like we've got our 4.
we have our 4. So the list of candidates is now, so the candidates that have been selected have been Kathy Rogg, John Hagenow, Peter Madland, and Wendy Tim. So they are no longer eligible. For the 4-year position. Now we will vote for the 3-year positions from the remaining candidates.
Wait, we just voted for a 3-year position.
The 2-year position.
Okay. So move on to the 2. 3 votes for 2 years.
And then you which surprised me. I did not expect.
All right. Tim Cleaving had 4 votes. David Koch had 4 votes. Melanie Wojtash had 4 votes. Steve Jacobson had 2 votes, and Nick Fusion had 1 vote.
All right, so could you please read the top vote getters?
Yes, the top 3 vote getters were Tim Cleaving with 4, David Koch with 4, and Melanie Wojtash with 4.
So we got
And
our, all right, which of these things do we use?
just a second. You're getting ahead of me.
Oh, I got it.
All right,
I
the
think I have the right piece.
following 3 individuals are appointed to a regular position for a 2-year term, and that is Tim Heidi, David Koch, and Melanie Wojtash. For the remaining 2 individuals, we can, the highest vote getter, as long as they have a majority vote from the council members, will get the 3-year term, and if the second person has, again, a majority vote from the council members, then they will get a 2-year term.
And just to clarify, we do not have to cast a vote.
You can cast no votes, or you can cast 2 votes.
I thought we only vote for 1.
You can vote for 2.
Or two.
No, it says vote.
It says
For the
vote for 1.
alternative.
Or we changed it.
No, we're voting for 2. Because that's what the process said, vote for 2.
But there's only 2 ones.
Yeah, but you don't have to vote, you do not have to cast a ballot for 2 people.
Gotcha.
That's correct.
Well, unless someone doesn't vote for someone,
You don't have,
or we get ties.
there's no requirement to cast a vote for someone.
I got all these extra pieces of paper. I don't know what to do.
All right, Steve Jacobson received 3 votes, and Nick Fusion received 3 votes.
There's only 5 of us. How did that happen?
Someone voted for 2.
Oh, okay, got it. So back to the drawing board.
No.
Yeah, 3.
Three votes.
Now we have
You
to,
said
we're going to have to vote for the 3-year term. We have a tie. So we have to vote for one of those 2 for the 3-year term.
So the guidance this time is to vote for 1.
Vote for 1. That's where you saw the vote for 1. You pulled the wrong one out.
We've got lots of pieces of paper to write on.
All right, there are 3 votes for Steve Jacobson and 2 votes for Nick Fusion.
All right, Steve Jacobson has been selected for the alternate 3-year position. And Nick Bajurgan has been selected for the 2-year position.
2-year alternate.
2-year alternate position, yeah. The 3-year alternate position, 2-year alternate position. All right. All right. Now to review the results, Kathy Rowe has been appointed to a regular position for 3 years. John Hagenow has been appointed to a regular position for 3 years. Peter Madland has been appointed to a regular position for 3 years. Wendy Tim has been appointed to a regular position for 3 years. Tim Heidi has been appointed to a regular position for 2 years. David Koch has been appointed to a regular position for 2 years. Melanie Wotash has been appointed to a regular position for 2 years. Steve Jacobson has been appointed to an alternate position for 3 years. And Nick Bajurgan has been appointed to an alternate position for 2 years. I would like to direct the town staff to ask the town attorney to draft a resolution with these appointments for the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval on the consent agenda on May 15th.
Question. These are renewable positions, are they not?
What do you mean by renewable?
After 3 years,
There's no
can they be
term.
reappointed?
There's no term limit.
Okay,
Actually,
that's what I thought.
a total term limit of 12 years of office.
That's a long time, that's fine.
I can be wrong. Yeah, I thought the maximum.
I don't
was what,
remember putting
3
12 on it, but
I don't,
4 3-year terms.
I don't think that's in the
I
charter.
don't think it's in the
Okay.
chart.
I don't
Or-
know.
No, we discussed it when we had the resolution.
No.
Okay.
All right. That completes the election of the Planning Commission.
Thank you
Uh,
very much.
I believe overall we have a very good Planning Commission.
I'm very, very excited to work with that group.
I think the interviews were very helpful, even though I knew some of the people. I thought the interviews clarified some things.
Yes. And we get rid of some stuff, and we'll go on to the other business item that we added to the agenda. And as we get into that, the first piece of other business, which will be very brief, I'd like to bring up is that we received the sales tax revenues for February from the county today. Our estimates were $224 off.
Couldn't you get a little closer?
Well done, Ken.
Yeah.
No magic there. And the money was deposited, the $154,000, it was a total of $254,000 was our share of the revenue for February, and it was deposited in our bank account. The amount deposited today was $154,000 of that, because $200,000 repaid part of the $600,000 advance to get county's goodness.
Mhm.
So, the next item of business is the letter that we've all received from the Summit County Housing Authority. Is there first any discussion? How many people do we have online?
Just 2 right now.
All right. Kathy and
Steve Chester. Stephen Chester.
all right. So, would anyone like to have any comments? Comment away.
I'm extremely disheartened by housing authorities dismissal of our home rule town and the fact that we weren't offered a seat at their table, given the concentration of affordable housing that we have in Keystone and our commitment to joining the overall Summit County community.
Yes?
I did ask, based on the letter which indicated that they needed to unanimously accept us, to please clarify who voted what way. And the answer that I received from Corey Bird, Executive Director, was the board only reviewed the letter to respond to the request. We did not vote on Keystone. The letter was approved by towns of Breckenridge, Silverthorne, and Frisco, along with Summit County. Dillon was not present. A vote to approve or not approve Keystone being part of SCHA-IGA will not take place unless the request stated in the letter are achieved.
There has been no request in the letter.
I concur, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Davis.
I think we all did, reviewed the letter, and I found their positions very vague. I think at some point we need to ask for clarification. And, you know, what do they mean by finalizing the details of the new town government? I'm assuming that the town's housing policy, including STRs, is an effort to delay this until at least September. But I think that was not clear. I also think it's, as I read the material that Councilmember Thisted sent, because we are incorporated, because we are not a member, the authority will continue to hold those funds, is the way I read their bylaws. I think we need to clarify that. Are these funds being held or are they being distributed, and if so, where? Is the money being retained? So I think I think it was, the letter was very vague, and I think we need clarification and maybe some timelines, or we need to request that.
I think all of you have received a interpretation of the law from our attorney. I will not go over that here, since that is confidential information to the council, so you understand the legal position here and our options in that area. And with that, Councilmember Kerr.
Thank you. I was intrigued at what can be looked at as a criteria for membership, in that this letter specifies that before the SCHA will formally consider Keystone as a member, the association, or the authority that is, would need to understand the town's housing policy, particularly as it relates to short-term rentals, unquote. So I would concur with my fellow council members that there is more detail that we deserve, and it begs the question, is there some unspoken criteria that we should understand about what they need to know about short-term rentals?
Earlier today, I had the opportunity to have a brief session with the interim town manager and the town attorney, and we discussed the subject in potential approaches. The consensus of that group was that we should go back to the county to the Housing Authority very quickly with a letter that expresses our extreme disappointment in the decision. Ask for a meeting as soon as possible. Ask them to provide clarification of the information that they require. That we would like that meeting to be with the entire board. We would invite them to meet here at Keystone.
Clarification,
the entire
Housing Authority Board and the entire town council.
SCHA board, and we've determined who we want to attend from here. And I would assume it'd probably be our entire council. But invite them to be here at Keystone, so particularly so they can see this property and our desire to use some of those funds in the future for purchasing the land around this property for workforce housing and for the community. Also at the same time, inform them that we believe that they have violated their IGA in terms of distribution of February's SCHA sales and use tax revenues, because they distributed $130,000 of the revenue that was generated in Keystone to Summit County earlier this week. And to request that those funds be brought back to the Housing Authority, so it would be in compliance with their IGA, and those the funds would be held in the Housing Authority per the IGA and not distributed, to ensure that we have full public visibility into how those funds would be used, and that they should be retained for Keystone's eventual entrance into the Housing Authority. Councilmember.
That was my reading of their IGA as well.
Section 10, subparagraph D is a reading. So
I think it's A, D, and I think E also applies. Maybe.
Well, E applies. It's really D and E that apply in our particular case, but it's D that's very specific on that language. So that's what the recommendation from staff was, as well as my recommendation, is that the town manager would draft that letter. I would review that letter with him, and we would get that letter out very early next week back to the Housing Authority. And it'd be expressed in the strongest terms of disappointment, as well as the immediate request for a meeting. I would suspect that the answer will come back that they would like to meet at the next Housing Authority meeting on May 20th.
I would love even stronger terms than maximum disappointment, perhaps shock and disappointment. Personally, I feel outraged, but.
As part of that letter, we're also going to be talking about and asking for the criteria, but saying that they said in here, they say it's the board's understanding there are several items to be worked out to Summit County surrounding affordable housing projects that should be resolved in the near future. We know of no Summit County projects that there is any dispute on regarding affordable housing projects. We had an issue. We were working on the management of the workforce housing deed restricted houses, but there were no projects that were involved. So that will be also expressed.
Please.
I think that falls under shock that there were all of these concerns and matters which they apparently knew about and didn't discuss with our representatives, despite them being there for 4 months.
Well, for 2 months.
2 months.
But
we were
you understand, from the time we submitted to now, there will probably also be some reference in there to the fact that we submitted this on the 26th of February. It's now at the end of April, 2 months later. We've been available for discussion during this entire time, and they've chosen not to discuss it and just send this letter.
And you go first.
In relation to the criteria clarification, I would ask if they have any examples from the other towns that meet that standard or criteria. I mean, have they been expected to submit plans that outline their STR policies? And
I think we need to understand what they mean by criteria and what they're looking for. Right now, we don't know.
And perhaps there's an example that they've had one of the other towns submit.
Well, no, the other towns were initial members, so they wouldn't be. But in this case, they didn't say criteria. What they said is they want to understand our policies related to short-term rentals and how our monies are anticipated to be spent in coming years.
Seems like interference with local government.
Why, we agree.
It suggests that they are going to weigh in on whether they approve of that, and that could be a consideration when they vote.
I would maybe ask them if they feel that they have the right to weigh in on each other's policies,
But
if they feel like they have the right to weigh in on.
I think we'll have an opportunity to do that as we go forward. I think we want to have a letter that gets us into the face-to-face discussion with them and not burn the bridge down before we get there.
Accurate. I think simply to raise the bar on transparency
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's
for all members.
that is a term that we need to include in the letter, because the letter was exceedingly vague.
Yes.
I did forward you all that
Thank you.
communication I got back.
Yeah. Thank you. Did you also forward it to the town manager?
I forwarded it to all council staff.
All right.
With that he's on the staff, right?
All right. So, all right. Any other discussion other than shock and dismay?
Dismayed.
The town manager is going to take the first cut of the draft, and I'll get with him and we'll renoodle it as we go forward. Councilmember Davis?
Wait, once the letter is finalized, will you provide us with a copy, just so we know?
Absolutely, we'll get a copy. Everyone will get a copy.
Just so we know what's been
Yeah,
said.
we just want to get this letter out.
I
very
agree.
quickly.
I'm not asking that we draft by committee, I just would like to see it.
So, any other discussion on this right now? I think the words that I used last night in my email to our interim manager was, we need to determine how we're going to approach this, because I'm dealing with a very pissed off council tomorrow night.
I think that's an
Accurate representation.
Highly accurate, Mr. Kern.
And just disappointed. I'm disappointed in the individual level of accountability and lack of ethics in relation to a home rule town that is clearly now a legal member of the community.
I think it's particularly upsetting that they have violated their IGA by delivering funds to the county.
Yes.
I expected better from them. I hope they'll do better next time.
It would be interesting to see the response to that one. So, all right, if there's nothing else, any other business we need to talk about? Anything from staff? Any concerns from staff from what we just talked about?
Nope.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? We're adjourned, and I missed it by an hour and 20 minutes.
Look at us go.
You thought,